Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Reinke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites, manufacturing.net and Industrial Equipment News, and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Or you can subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can join us when we go live every Thursday. And Jeff, when they subscribe to us on YouTube and join us live, they get to see the little Easter eggs that maybe get cut out of this thing before we publish it.
I love how we call those Easter eggs. That's fantastic.
It's you got to put a positive spin on everything, and instead of it just being like a flat mistake on my behalf, it's an Easter egg for the people that are live.
I love how you attempt to at first sort of hide the thing that was maybe your blooper or whatever, and then you just circle back and just totally lean into it.
Yeah. It's a hidden gem.
It is. Well, I mean, like if I'm gonna torture myself in my mind, why not let everybody know what's going on?
Yeah.
And how are you doing this week?
Good. Yeah.
All right.
Ready for an exciting podcast after all of the well-researched statements that came out in our spitballing prior to recording.
That's right. You know what? We lean on the facts and we stick to them at the Today in Manufacturing podcast.
You don't want to know.
Not the pre-show.
Yeah. Jeff, we have producers, not fact checkers.
This is true.
Well, Anna. We have Anna.
Our audience,
she's
they
a
fact check
sharpshooter.
us. That's that.
Oh, yeah, that's true. We actually get quite a few
So
facts checked.
feel free to continue to do that.
Jeff, you doing good this week?
I'm fantastic, David. Thank you for asking.
Very good. I don't want to skip that again. I listened to that part of the podcast from last week, and I'm just like, and I knew it was coming, and I was like already shameful. Just like, this is where you just fly by Jeff. He's got that look at his face like, what about me? You don't care? Nobody cares.
I'm over it, sort of.
Well, before we get started with our first story this week, we have a word from our new sponsor, Sickich. This week's episode is brought to you by Sickich. Supply chain challenges like inventory shortages and late deliveries from suppliers have exposed weaknesses, shrinking profits for 93% of companies in the past 5 years. We are at a turning point. Businesses can modernize their supply chain management or just scramble to survive when something goes wrong. This new report, 7 Key Areas for Modernizing Distribution, will help you unlock 7 key areas of supply chain management that enterprises can leverage to retain their market share and stay ahead of disruptions. Download the report now. You can click the link in the live chat, and you can also click it in the body copy below the video. All right, our first story this week. A 3D printed shark pipe beat out Tesla valves in one direction flow. This is a hot mix headline right there.
What does that mean?
It means so many things.
All right.
Researchers from the University of Washington wanted to improve the pipe. Specifically, a pipe in which fluid flows one way, not the other, and without using flaps. So the team turned to shark intestines. While humans have pretty much hollow tubes, shark intestines have a network of spirals surrounding an interior passageway. Flow asymmetry could have tremendous potential, but the mechanism was puzzling. The researchers struggled to determine which parts of the shark's intestine contributed to the asymmetry and which was simply used to increase surface area for nutrient absorption. The team 3D printed several biomimetic pipes with various interior helices. The first pipes were printed with rigid materials and performed well in unidirectional flow. One-way pipes, now, they're not exactly new. More than 100 years ago, Nikola Tesla patented the Tesla valve, a one-way fluid flow device with no moving parts. But the flow asymmetry in these designs didn't just rival Tesla's, they kind of knocked it out of the park. But it came after a few tweaks. The researchers gave another run at the pipe's rigidity because, well, shark intestines aren't rigid. The team printed, quote, deformable structures made from the softest polymer available. These flexible pipe designs performed at least 7 times better than all previously measured Tesla valves. UW postdoctoral researcher Ido Levin was quite excited, saying, quote, "You don't get to beat Tesla every day." And I thought this was a really fascinating story. And I like how even though his work is more than a century old now, people still want to figure out a way to best Tesla when it comes to product design.
Yes, this was a very detailed story, so it was like a lot to unpack in terms of how this was developed, what they were trying to achieve, all the different iterations here. But one thing I learned initially is how lame human intestines are.
Super lame, just hollow structures.
Just not even of interest, like at all in any way. Not going to help the world. Get them out of here. Sharks only. But you know what? It was interesting to see this because I love we've talked about biomimicry so many times on the podcast and like how fun is it to observe. Humans are the focal point of a lot of this technology, but when they use animals, I think it's just so interesting because like stuff that you never knew about, like how these animals' bodies have adapted to like their environment and over time and things like that. So I was looking at the shark specifically and some of the way the shark's body has been used for other development projects.
Oh, cool.
And I found this story about basically like a wetsuit that apparently was like very highly publicized during the 2008 Olympics.
Yeah, it's what is it modeled after? It's not shark skin, it's...
Well, it basically is modeled after shark skin.
Okay.
The material is made up of to mimic the overlapping scales that you can't see with the human eye, but under a microscope you can see on a shark's body. They're called dermal denticles or lil skin teeth. I don't think lil with a L-I-L apostrophe.
Yeah, lil skin teeth.
No scientist said that.
No.
Lil skin teeth. The denticles have grooves running down their length in alignment with water flow. So the grooves disrupt the formation of eddies or turbulent swirls of slower water, making the water actually pass by faster. So it says the rough shape also discourages parasitic growth such as algae and barnacles. And so they were able to replicate these dermal denticles in swimsuits, which they've now banned in swimming competitions. Mm-hmm. But that's how effective they are. Yeah. And then they've also used them on the bottom of boats. But the other thing that they're doing with this technique is creating new surfaces in hospitals that resist bacteria growth because the bacteria can't hold on to the rough surface, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
Especially like in the last couple of weeks talking about the Boar's Head plant and how the contamination there was so embedded within like the facility's equipment and flooring and how it can sit in a crack forever.
Yeah, they just shut her down.
They just had to shut it down. Yeah. So, you think about the thing that leads to the thing, Jeff.
Stealing.
I know it's early in the podcast too. I'm sorry to already drop that, but I think it's appropriate here. You just like you start with one thing and then think of all the different applications that you can apply this to, and this is just another way that the shark, incidentally, is being used in product development. I thought it was very cool.
So food manufacturing plants of the future covered in shark skin.
Lil skin teeth.
Lil skin teeth.
Yeah, not actual shark skin.
Yeah. No. I like the company Lil Skin Teeth for food manufacturing. That's the first booth I stop at a
for
trade
sure.
show.
Yep.
But Jeff, when I look at a story like this, I always like to think of that aha moment. And producer Eric, who put together this video, cut in some clips from them from Jaws when they were gutting some of the sharks. And at some point, somebody opened up a shark, looked at its intestines, and went, "Huh, look at that!" And just that's where it started. It's pretty wild.
It's Shark Week, David. Come on, don't you watch Shark Week?
It is Shark Week right now.
I do.
No, it is not right now.
Oh, okay.
It is always in July. But it is one of the favorites. Like I look forward to that every year. Still watch them on demand.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Shark Week, check them out.
My husband too. He loves it.
Stuff.
Okay, I haven't gotten into Shark Week. I like sharks. Don't get me wrong.
I'm not going to lie. I think a little less of you right now.
I call it a shark year because every day is Shark Day for me.
No one's buying that.
Shark year.
This was an incredibly interesting story for a number of different reasons. Just kind of a lot of random things sort of stuck out to me. First of all, I really admire anybody who literally tries to reinvent the wheel. I mean, think about it. It's a pipe. Who looks at a pipe and thinks, I can make this better somehow. I mean, that's an incredible mindset that I wish I had more of sometimes. I'm a little too practical in the way I look at stuff sometimes. The other thing is when we look at all the innovations surrounding just materials and all the different things that have been created, I think since we've been covering manufacturing, that may be the area where we've seen the most innovation. I mean, it's been small scale, little improvements here and there, but I mean, literally thousands of different materials in the last, 2 decades or so. It's incredible.
And we'll touch on that in another story too, but just the types of materials that they're 3D printing is wild.
And I guess that kind of leads into the other thing I was thinking about too, and looking at this as we talk more about 3D printing, which I am pro 3D printing. Okay. I do not want that to be mistaken.
Prove it.
I just said it. I meant it.
Okay.
I'll put my hand on the Bible. 3D printing.
You're going to start fact checking Jeff's feelings.
Where was I? Okay, 3D printing.
Yeah.
Again, all the incredible things that we're doing here now. One of the things that surprised me when we're 3D printing organs, but they said they still couldn't replicate like the intestinal feel and the sensitivity and the different degrees of softness that comes with that. So we still got a long way to go. As far as we've come with 3D printing, there's a long way to go. And I think one of the things that I hope to see a little bit more of in these stories too is when we talk about the recyclability of some of these polymers that are also being used. I think that's continuing to be a bigger issue. More of them are being used. We've done plenty of stories about plastics in places where we don't want plastics. So although it can be recycled and ground down to be used for other 3D printing applications, you'd still like to see some sort of general recyclability innovation sort of built into some of these materials as well. I think that's sort of maybe the next step that we strive for some of these 3D printing materials.
Well, and the fumes that are created during the printing process that can be quite toxic. The materials really stood out to me, Jeff, because so the actual intestines are still about 100 times softer than the softest 3D printable material that's commercially available. Because that was one thing that stood out to me as well. I'm like, well, no, they're printing organs, so you have to have that a softer material, but it's not exactly off the shelf yet. Yeah. I also thought that when they talked about how these there are so many opportunities for new material design, I feel like we get a release almost on a weekly basis for new materials coming out for 3D printers. And it's crazy that there's still just this cavern in between where we want to be and where we are now in terms of product development. One thing I would like to see is, maybe some of those, because, a lot of those materials are proprietary to each machine, like to see that opened up a little bit more. I think that might be cool. We also just have to take a minute to talk about the photos that they provided for this. Did you guys get a chance to check out some of those the stills where they basically made a bouquet of all the 3D printed pipes that they made and then put like a toy shark in the middle? I was just like, and that's what drew my eye. We're running through Eureka Alert where we find a lot of these scientific press releases posted. And I start by scrolling through photos and I was just like, what's going on there? And it was, it caught my eye and then, it made me laugh a little bit. But I don't know. I wanted to give some credit to, I think it was Edo Levin that actually took the photo. I'm just like, all right, you saw a pile of like translucent pipes and you're just like, what am I going to do with this?
Right, exactly.
And they're like, hey, someone go get me a toy shark. All right. Well, our next most popular story. 3 Mile Island could soon reopen to power Microsoft data centers. The 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant will live again. Most likely, maybe. We'll see. Last week, the plant's owner, Constellation Energy, said it will restart as part of a 20-year deal to supply Microsoft data centers with carbon-free energy. Microsoft hopes the deal will help the company be, quote, carbon negative by 2030. That means they will plan to remove more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere than the company emits everywhere. In 1979, the plant was the site of the nation's worst commercial nuclear power accident. But it only destroyed Unit 2. Unit 1 still works, and Constellation wants to bring it back online in 2028 with the hope of securing a license renewal from regulators to extend the plant's operations to at least 2054. To restart Unit 1, Constellation needs approvals from the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Nuclear. I did it again. I got it. Okay. U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission and state and local agencies. The restart will also require, quote, significant investments in the plant's turbine, generator, main power transformer, and cooling and control systems. Okay, Jeff, it's 2028. Is Unit 1 powering a Microsoft data center?
Hope so.
Yeah.
This is really an interesting, on a lot of fronts. First of all, when they talk about everything that needs to be done, I'm not a nuclear plant maintenance manager or anybody involved with that, but when they talk about needing to basically replace everything, the turbine, the generator, the power transformer, cooling and control systems. Did they miss anything? I mean, other than like the front door and Homer Simpson's chair, I think they got everything covered as far as what they need to replace here.
Yeah.
So that's a big investment. And right now, Constellation is saying they're not going to take any government subsidies to get this up and running, which either
Any special ones.
Well, I'll get to that. But I mean, so it's interesting. So either Microsoft is footing a huge part of this bill, or they see a big payout someplace else down the road. Now, when you look at what this plan is able to generate in terms of power, and the other thing we don't really know is how big of data centers these are that Microsoft is looking to connect to this facility. When you look at a typical data center and you look at the power that's coming out, this would be enough for like 20 traditional data centers.
Yeah.
Now, maybe that's what Microsoft has, and maybe they need all of that power. But it makes you wonder if they're going to be producing at the optimal level. Are they looking to like sell some of this power back to the grid? Are they looking for a potential revenue opportunity there? Also, with what they're doing and what's available in the Infrastructure Recovery Act, they can make upwards, and this is according to an MIT review article, almost $100 million in tax breaks that they could receive just for what they're using because all the incentives that have been put in there for nuclear facilities to get up and running. So how all of this plays out in terms of what Microsoft uses, what they pay, what Constellation makes from the government, I mean, this could be a real boon for Constellation, in addition to Microsoft getting, their PR plug out of this for going carbon
negative.
Carbon negative.
Yeah.
So this could be a very interesting blueprint for things moving forward. I think if this works as well, it's going to also restore a lot of confidence in nuclear power because there is no name more synonymous negatively with nuclear power than 3 Mile Island, which I guess they want to rename.
They do.
Good luck with that. We'll see how that goes. But like I said, it could be a very interesting blueprint for others down the road too.
Yeah, Anna, they want to rename it the Crane Clean Energy Center. You think that's going to stick? No one, never again shall it be called 3 Mile Island. Everyone will know, no, we're looking at Crane Clean Energy Center.
Yeah, I mean, renaming stuff is hard. No matter what it is,
Yeah, especially when it's as widely known that you can see a blurry photo of it and it's 3 Mile Island.
Yeah.
It's so recognizable.
Yeah, and I don't know, ask Twitter how that's going, just...
No, you mean X?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, I meant X.
Yeah.
The name that no one ever used one time.
Well, no, they use it all the time. They just have to say X, the platform
formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah.
Yes, this is a super interesting, scenario here. I think a lot of reports are talking about the role that AI has to play in this business move. We talk a lot about AI, not just on this podcast, but I think in general, mainstream news coverage, it's kind of a buzz topic. I think this brings up an interesting discussion point around AI that doesn't really get touched on a lot, which is how much energy it requires.
Oh, yeah.
And while it's easy to look at this as a bad thing, maybe it won't be. So it sounds like, this is me trying to be glass half full, I guess. But, Microsoft, as you mentioned, has very ambitious net zero goals. They have a pledge to be running their global network on clean energy in 2025. So that's just kind of like part A of what you would refer to before. And because of its emerging use of AI, it increasingly needs more and more massive amounts of electricity to power its data centers. And, because the framework is there, I think it's requiring Microsoft to pursue clean energy projects that are a little outside of the scope right now, and maybe they wouldn't be doing if not for this need with AI. This is one, according to reports, According to reports, another area that Microsoft is looking at is nuclear fusion. We know that's still not quite game ready, but there's been a lot of work that's been done on that. Obviously, that's potentially abundant, cheap, and clean electricity. Scientists have been working on that for a long time. It's still in development, but the Washington Post says that Microsoft is, quote, ahead of the game, having signed a contract to buy fusion energy from a startup that claims it can deliver it by 2028.
Jeez.
So my point is that while AI may be a huge energy hog, if it is the impetus for companies with a lot of money to start investing in technologies that have been sort of sitting, waiting in the wings for some money and some scale and some development, maybe that's a good thing because we have a lot of needs for clean energy. It's just not just AI, but electric vehicles and all the other things that are going to be stressors on the grid going forward. We have to figure out a way beyond, how to move away from coal, and with solar and wind, there's other ways, right? So interesting to see how this plays out.
Well, and we struggle with our grid and infrastructure for how many years, can't figure it out. All of a sudden we need to power a couple of data centers for AI, and it's like, whoa, how about we just turn all the nuclear plants back on?
Well, that's because it took some private funding.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's what I mean. But I find it frustrating that you got to kind of wait for that rather than it could have been used to maybe improve our grid.
But I think there's still a lot of very negative public sentiment whenever you talk about nuclear power.
Agreed.
People are going to bring up Fukushima and everything else. So which not relevant, I don't think, but
they're not going to bring up Crane Clean Energy Center though, Jeff.
No. Well, and Jeff, you talked about the possibility for selling energy. I could be wrong, but I think that Amazon either has built or is building a massive data center in the same area.
It is. It's not in the same area. It is in Pennsylvania, and they are right next to another nuclear plant that they are. It's kind of murky what exactly the partnership is there, but they're definitely sourcing power for that data center from that nuclear plant.
Okay. This is going to be one of the first reactors in the country to reopen after shutting down. And Microsoft is going to be buying all the electricity from the reactor. I just find that crazy. It's enough electricity to power 800,000 homes. And Microsoft is like, no, we won't have any leftovers. Okay. And I think we read the same article, Jeff, because I read the MIT Tech Review article, and it says how nuclear power remains one of the most expensive forms of electricity today, but could play a crucial role on the grid since the plants typically put out a consistent amount of electricity. There's a big emphasis on firm power versus solar and wind power, which fluctuates in terms of what it can generate. And basically, Microsoft kind of gets to have their cake and eat it too, getting the benefits of nuclear power without having to build an entirely new project. And one of the parts of this article that I thought was really cool is, and we kind of mentioned it, the company is not going to seek any special subsidies from the state, federal, or from the state. That IRA Act money is
substantial,
plentiful, but they have some projects on their plate, like they mentioned. It could be the start of a nuclear resurgence. Like it could mean new reactors that are being built, and I find that fascinating. That that could be, kind of what is it? Past is present, or past will be future.
Not familiar with that one.
No, I don't know. I'm trying to think it. I'm working through it.
Are you
making like a Back to the Future type title here?
Making this up as you go?
Well, it's past is present, but I'm trying to say like past isn't necessarily present, past to be future. I'm working it out. It's still under development.
All right, get back to us on that.
I'll get back to you. Okay, just put it.
Is it a math thing? We won't
asterisk.
Get it?
No, this isn't a math thing. This
Carry
is a
the
words thing, which
one.
means I should be better at it. It's just not going well. All right. Well, our next most popular story: UAW workers near strike at Ford factory. Last week, the UAW announced that workers at Ford's River Rouge Complex tool and die unit in Dearborn, Michigan, would strike starting today if they didn't resolve local contract issues. The UAW says Ford has failed to reach an agreement with the Local 600, more than a year after the contract's deadline. Core issues in negotiations were job security and wage parity for skilled trades. The factory employs approximately 6,000 workers. There are about 500 in the tool and die unit. But it looks like we made a deal just in time. Yesterday, workers reached a tentative agreement. The deal strengthens job security, specifically protecting against the impacts of advancements in 3D printing and a promise for future work. The some 500 workers in Dearborn will review the details of the deal and hold a vote in the next few days. Anna, workers reached a deal just in time, but this could just kind of be the tip of the iceberg when it comes to additive manufacturing disrupting tool and die shops.
Yeah, that was a confusing point for me. So clearly, you mentioned some of the big advancements that just took place in the last day. We still don't know everything. The UAW published a statement about this tentative contract agreement, but there was very few details in it. It was pretty short. Mm-hmm. You mentioned one point that I also found interesting, which was talking about how the deal protects against the impacts of advancement in 3D printing. And the UAW said it also establishes a process to secure additional die work as required. We know a lot of traditional manufacturing processes are being disrupted by 3D printing. Traditional trades involved in things like casting and forging and machining probably feel like they have to go on the defense a little bit because of concerns about what's going to happen in the future. I know these types of areas are very high risk when it comes to robotics as well. And so that is a difficult place to be. However, and absent any more details than that, it feels a little strange. Like, are they asking the plant to guarantee employment in the event that they can be replaced by 3D printers and automation? And if so, how long does this go on? I don't know that. I don't know that that's like it's
not sustainable.
A long-term play. Yeah,
No.
It's hard to see that being like, what you're kind of hanging your hat on this part of the deal. That's a scary place to be.
No, I agree. I got a huge adapt or die vibe from that release where it was basically, pushing back progress just so that way we can hang on to our skill set that may be in less and less demand as metal additive manufacturing becomes more sophisticated. And so to me, we always talk about reskilling people for AI. Mm-hmm. You talk about reskilling for modern factories as part of reskilling tool and die shops. Maybe get into learning metal additive manufacturing, and because a lot of these parts might just be printed in the future.
Well, and I hope that is part of the deal. Yeah. And they're just not saying that. I mean, nothing was conclusive when we recorded this. By the time it hits you guys next week in the newsletters, maybe we will know more.
Yeah.
But at this time, we don't know. I hope that that's part of the deal. I know that the UAW has done well in the past, focusing on cross-training for the future automotive market. We saw that with some of the details that they included in their contracts about transitioning workers to electric vehicles, that we're not doing that now. So hopefully that's there. I would like to know more about this, though.
Jeff, what were your thoughts on this? Metal additive manufacturing means shorter lead times, more complex parts, lower costs. Doesn't it seem odd that as part of the deal, they need to ensure job security by saying, hey, we're going to keep doing things the way we've been doing them forever for just a little bit longer?
There was
like kicking the can a little bit.
There was a lot of weird stuff about this, in my opinion. I mean, Sean Fain has never been tentative about releasing a lot of details and information. Now, I understand the scale was much different. We're talking about a subset at one plant, not necessarily 3 big automakers all at the one time. But if you remember last fall, man, we had bullet points on exactly what they were looking for. And everything involving this strike was very broad and very bland, talking about protecting jobs, better pay, protecting tradespeople, things like that. It was very broad. I thought it was also very interesting that this has been going, or they've been working without a contract essentially for a year, or the same contract that was up for renewal about a year ago. When you start putting all this stuff together, I'll put the tool and die thing aside for just a second, the 3D printing aside for just a minute. I think Ford is I get the feeling that they are sort of biding their time a little bit here.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the facility in which they make the F-150. It's a clear-cut winner, okay? We don't want to mess with the F-150. And there was a lot of talk that if these 500 tool and die makers went on strike, other areas of this facility would also go on strike in a move of consolidarity. So looking at it from Ford's perspective, why would you want to disrupt that right now? You can't afford to disrupt that. I have a feeling they made some short-term concessions, knowing in the long term that potentially a technology like 3D printing is going to help them recoup some cost. Now, the other part of that is when you start mentioning about being technology averse, which is how this read.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if that was intentional. I don't know if that was done to appease certain stakeholders to say, hey, we're not going to let 3D printing take us out of our jobs.
Yeah.
But I think to a man, my dad was a tool and die maker for almost 35 years. If you would have given him the option between using a screen and a 3D printer and saving his hands from going over blueprints and working with metal, he would have taken that 3D printer all day long.
Yeah.
There is a way, just like with every technology, it's not about reducing headcount, it's about using your resources better. And when it comes to designing tools, designing different platforms for producing parts, there is always going to be a place for skilled workers. Always. It doesn't matter if it's plastic, metal, whatever. So that was very odd. But again, I think it just feeds into this whole thing where you had a group that was it had the potential to be very, very confrontational and very disruptive. And Ford did not want that to happen at this facility.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be more of a gradual transition. And I don't even want to say losing jobs, but I think transitioning to a different skill set as we move forward, because 3D printing isn't going anywhere, especially not on the automotive side.
Well, especially not anywhere. I mean, at IMTS this year, Oak Ridge had a complete work cell right in the front of the show where it kind of went from concept through development with just straight inline 3D printing. And I mean, I know that we talk about that being the future with a 3D printer on every floor. And I think that if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have thought that it would have already been realized by now. But I still feel like that is the future we are headed towards.
Well, and we're not there. We can't scale that yet. Like
Yeah.
they don't move fast enough to make that a reality yet. But when we look at EVs, okay, and we've got this 1,000-pound battery or more, 1,500-pound battery, everything else needs to be lighter to hit a lot of those benchmarks that you want for range and everything else. That's where 3D printing is going to become more and more important, regardless of what it is. If you can shave ounces off the weight of that vehicle, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that just needs to be embraced. Made that whole statement, even though it was one sentence, it just stood out so glaringly. It was so weird.
This is the red herring. This is why they put it in there.
Yeah.
They're just like, whoa, no, look over here, look over here. It reminded me of a conversation that I had with Fast Tech, which is based out of Danville, Virginia, at IMTS. They make huge 3D printed metal parts. And they told me the bigger the part, the better. And they can do it with a few week lead time. Right now, they're mostly working with the Navy, aerospace, and energy companies. But machines are getting bigger, machines are getting better, and they're coming quickly. And so they were just more excited about how they're going to continue to take business from these major sectors. And I think automotive might be a big part of that one. And while a shop like this maybe isn't going to be doing work for Ford, I think that Ford needs to realize that that might be the future when it comes to these metal components.
Well, maybe that's more the crux of this, less outsourcing of these types of jobs to an outfit like that and bringing it inside to train them up, uptrain them, and upskill the workforce. You'd hope that's where it's going,
Right.
and not the context in which it seemed to be presented.
Yeah. All right. Well, our next most popular story. Proposed bill in Brazil would require automakers to sell amphibious cars. A lawmaker in Brazil has proposed a bill that's going to add requirements for the country's auto industry to sell amphibious cars. I just wanted to say that twice. It is wild. According to Car Scoops, the lawmakers think cars that work on both water and land, quote, could help save lives in areas that are prone to flooding. The bill's author says the amphibious cars could, quote, contribute to the protection of the lives and property of citizens, enabling more agile and effective responses in emergency situations. In April, heavy rain produced Brazil's worst flooding in more than 80 years. In 2023, there were 3 other catastrophic floods. Observers say the bill is unlikely to survive the approval process. And Jeff, did this pass the sniff test for you, or did this seem more like a publicity stunt?
I don't want to say publicity stunt. I think that negates the impact of what this area of Brazil is dealing with.
Yep.
I mean, I think it was done. It may have been a calculated move to raise greater awareness. I mean, I was not. I didn't realize what this these folks have been dealing with here. Basically, over a 2-week period, they received the same amount of rain they typically get in 3 months.
Yeah.
We're talking about 500,000 people displaced. We're talking about $3.5 billion in damage that is going to take more than months, maybe years, to really fix and for this to get right. So I can't blame any type of lawmaker in this area about trying to raise awareness and maybe going to an extreme fashion or bringing up some sort of out there solutions to raise awareness as to what's going on here as a way of saying what we've been doing, that's not enough. We need to really get crazy here and think about how we're going to fix this situation. So I think that's what was maybe the antithesis for a lot of this. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
I can definitely go along with where he's coming from. From an economic perspective, I mean, come on.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean,
you know, it's out there.
yeah.
The one thing I did, more of a lesser note, one of the vehicles, amphibious vehicles, that is available in Brazil is from our friends at BYD in China.
Okay.
They produced a vehicle called the Yangwang U8.
Oh.
It's described as looking like a Range Rover, driving like a Ferrari, and floating like a boat. And
Of
it's
course.
pretty sweet.
Oh, we covered that. Yeah.
It is pretty amazing. We did cover this one.
I think we've covered that car before because that statement just sounds so
So
familiar.
they have sold this technology to the Brazilian government, basically for military applications. Okay. But they do have a consumer version of it. It's not ready for sale yet. And it's about 6 times more than the average price of a vehicle in Brazil. But if you do want it, basically when you come across more than 3 feet of water, everything closes up. The windows even go up.
Yeah.
The sunroof automatically opens. So it seals the compartment because it's an electric vehicle.
Yeah.
And it actually is almost, the wheels look like almost work like a trolling motor.
Yeah.
So you can actually putz along at about 2 miles an hour. The steering wheels work. You have direction, everything like that. And when you come back up on solid land, it takes off just like an SUV.
Weird.
So it is crazy. The technology is out there. I don't think it's affordable for the average consumer in Brazil.
Yeah.
But, you know, and again, I think it just goes back to raising awareness about what these folks are dealing with down there.
No, and I think that's a really good point where maybe this lawmaker just said, hey, if we're not going to do anything else to address this situation, we need cars that float because we're not doing anything else that's saving our people.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with a lot of what Jeff said. That Brazil has had a rough go of it over the last 2 years. This definitely felt like raising awareness is maybe a nice way of saying what I was thinking, which was pandering. You know, sometimes these like straw man type legislation is just to show somebody that you're doing something.
Yeah.
Because if your goal is emergency response, like this just seems like a very weird way of addressing that. You could have amphibious vehicles for emergency response. You could have a government contract for that. Like anything else you might source for defense or national security. But if your goal is for every person to be able to buy their own vehicle to escape a emergency flash flood situation, like good luck getting them to buy these.
Yeah.
You know, no one is going to pay a premium that would be embedded in scaling this tech in order to have, you know, the off chance that they're going to be out in the rain and get caught in a flood. There's no way that makes financial sense. There's no way it makes financial sense for an automaker. And so if you are tethering them to $1 billion in development costs to build this thing,
Right.
I don't know. It makes no sense at all. I think that, you know, if it's a plan born of trying to bring attention to this issue, the specifics of it are just very highly misguided. It was a try. But.
Do you think the automakers even give this any time? Or do you think they look at the headline and just think, you know what? Lawmakers say the craziest things.
I think so. I mean, there's no way that this passes. It doesn't make sense for consumers. It doesn't make sense for businesses. It's a red herring. It's just, to Jeff's point, like it's a problem that needs to be solved.
Yeah.
They need to come up with ways to do it. This is not a practical one though.
Jeff, I can just see the constituents texting this lawmaker like, you serious?
Yeah.
Just let me know. Are we just jockeying here? Or is this real? You know, we'll get our guys on it.
Yeah.
But maybe they, okay, this isn't going to work. Then let's invest as a government into a fleet of these for, each region.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Like
that makes sense.
A government contract for a fleet of them for emergency response. That makes perfect sense. People don't want to read perfect sense.
Nope.
People want to read, you know what? Everyone needs a floating car. And you know what? A flying car, well, they're at it too.
No one needs
the
that.
other thing is there are engineering infrastructure options here as well in terms of dealing with water. Okay.
Yeah.
We do know how to handle this. So it's making those investments as well and loosening up the purse strings. And I just feel, and yes, it's a ridiculous sentiment. Okay. But if you're a lawmaker and you're not getting anywhere, you're basically throwing your hands up going, well, you don't want to give me drains and pumps. Give me a floating vehicle.
Yeah. Well, I like this idea because I finally have a reason.
Of course you do.
Well, so
David wants to land his one-person autonomous helicopter on top of the floating boat or floating car,
it'll be a Terra
which will
Tiger.
be driven by a robot.
It won't be a floating car. It'll be a very specific Terra Tiger amphibious ATV. Now,
Terra Tiger's that like a
it's so it
Patrol
is
thing or something?
I've mentioned it before, I think, but my family is an Alice Chalmers family, right? And my dad collects antique tractors, and he just has dozens of them, right? And I never saw it. You know, I was like, I get one. What do I do with it? You know, I could just my 3/4 of an acre. Could I justify a tractor for that one? But Alice Chalmers had this crazy amphibious ATV, and actually, I put a link to the ad in our doc if you want to pull it up at all. And I just always joked about how this is going to be my Alice Chalmers play in the family. Now, this thing was invented by Marvin Feldman of Feldman Engineering and Manufacturing based out of Sheboygan Falls, Wisconsin. And then it was sold to Alice Chalmers Manufacturing. And it is a 6x6 amphibious ATV. And it is just incredible. It's really hard to find them. Actually, if anybody out there has a line on one, please let me know. But they sold it as this crazy, by land and by sea, just, you tearing this thing around the trail, and then you can just go flying into the pond to go fishing. And, it had some ups and downs, not a lot of commercial success. But I just read this and I was like, oh, man, you know what? I finally need to get it. I need space in the garage for my Terra Tiger ATV. And if you guys could hear the audio.
Man, they're even fishing and hunting off this thing.
Yeah, fishing and hunting. And
And you can tell it was made in like the 70s because no helmets.
Oh,
no
yeah,
seatbelts.
That's not
People are almost flying out of this thing. It's awesome.
That's not the only reason you can tell it was made in the 70s.
Well, I also
the
like
hairstyles.
I also like
It's
how
like pure sepia.
it shows people just, when you get together and you just set up a couple of poles and, you wave your amphibious ATVs through an obstacle course that you made just for fun.
This looks amazing.
I
I'm
know.
not lying. This thing
is.
I'll go in with you.
Yeah. Oh, that's
You guys,
fantastic.
wear a helmet.
Well,
Man, this thing is like ready to flip on a moment's notice.
Yes, it is.
It is a little tippy. But I mean, I think, there's an opportunity here to have a Today in Manufacturing Terra Tiger.
Oh, 100%.
Business expense.
Absolutely.
Just makes sense.
I'm surprised. Producer Eric does not seem that enthralled with this one.
Oh, producer Eric had one on eBay 2 years
You
ago.
had it in the cart?
Get it in the cart.
In the cart.
Honda makes one. Well,
We don't want that one.
we're looking for lines on amphibious ATVs. So if you see one, let me know.
Absolutely. That looks amazing.
Especially send me the link after 9 p.m. and there's just a really good.
How fast do you think it goes? Like, if you're watching this, you're thinking that thing's going like 40, 50 miles an hour. You think it's more like about like 10, 15?
I think it's going 28 miles an hour and it feels like 58.
Okay.
Yeah.
25, Eric?
All right. Producer Eric saying it tops out at 27. All right. True. We get the whole Today Manufacturing crew in there. Anna will watch.
5 miles per hour.
From the sidelines, just be like, "You're gonna get hurt," and
Be
then
careful.
just really that back pocket's ready for the "I told you so." All right, our most popular story this week: Ford patent could protect you from accidentally smuggling drugs. We're just all over the map today. I really like it. I really like it. Motor One recently spotted a new patent filed by Ford for a, quote, unknown cargo detection and evidence collection system that can use a vehicle's cameras and sensors to prevent the driver from becoming a blind mule. A blind mule is a person who unknowingly carries illegal drugs across the border. The more you know. The system is designed to detect suspicious activity by monitoring for fluctuations in a vehicle's weight, listening to any activity around the vehicle that seems out of the norm, and scanning for unfamiliar GPS signals. Because if they stash drugs in your wheel well, they're obviously going to LoJack it so they can find you. If the system detects odd activity, it can turn on the cameras, make recordings, and then store the footage that can be used as evidence. It's unclear if this is ever going to become a standard feature. And Anna, Ben posed a very interesting question in this piece when he put it together. If your car tells you that illegal drugs are planted in it, what do you do? Officer, hear me out.
Yeah.
Hear me out, officer. I got something to say.
Yeah.
I think there are drugs in my car.
Yeah, exactly. There's a dash light in my car that just like a bag of cocaine shape.
Yeah.
And it's on.
It's a sensor that just makes a sniffing noise.
Yeah, this is a very unusual story. But to be honest with you, like my nerdy secret is that I love automotive patent stories.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're so like weird and alarming and also meaningless because you never know if they're going to be used or not or what they're going to be used for or if they're just defensive patents. It's like playing a game, man. It's just a thought exercise. I
love the idea of a nerdy little secret.
Yep, that's it. So I read some other reports about this. Interesting Engineering, which is a great site, by the way, covered this. They posed the question that I think is really on everyone's mind, which is why a major auto manufacturer would commercially roll out technology that would benefit only a handful of people. Because, sure, this happens, but cases are extremely rare, I would assume, when compared to the number of car owners in the world.
Is it their way of getting around? Sorry if you might get into it. Is this their way of getting around like the Tesla Sentry patent? Because doesn't Tesla already do this?
The Sentry patent to prevent theft.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that it's theft prevention that is probably at the root of this technology. So if you look at like relay attacks, and this is what Interesting Engineering pointed out, they're talking about like when carjackers are using more sophisticated approaches to steal cars. And one pattern that has been found in what's called a relay attack is when two carjackers team up to steal the car, one stays close to the vehicle while another uses this device very close to the car's owner's NFC card or smartphone to relay a signal to unlock the car. This makes sense when you consider that one of the patent's components is detecting when someone is too close to your vehicle. To me, that makes tons more sense, especially when you consider the kind of brand damage that Kia and Hyundai took when their cars became known as very easy to steal.
Yeah.
So if Ford is looking for something as sort of an insurance policy on that, to me, that's where this works. I don't think it's like primarily for drug smuggling. I don't know that being a drug mule is like something that the average car owner is going to encounter, and more likely if you own a Ford.
Yeah, like is it more common? Like, is this primarily a Ford problem?
Yeah, like if you have a 1989 Ford Escort, you have a 50% chance. I'm using your.
I'm gonna fact check this.
Your logic of how you come up with stats. You have like a 50% chance of becoming a drug mule. I think based on something someone told me.
I always preface that with something along the lines of, I don't know for certain, but if I had to guess. If you drove a Ford F-150, then it goes down to 30%.
They just
Roughly.
Ford does the Bronco, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, is that how this all started?
Allegedly, Ford. Please don't sue me for saying any of this.
They saw, a mule-like animal on the side of a car, and they're like, "This is clearly the best vehicle for it." It all started with the Ford Bronco. Mm-hmm. I hear allegedly.
Well, it does happen. I mean, it's not frequent, but it does. I think where this comes from, I don't know, maybe I've been watching way too many Mission Impossible spy movies, but when you look at any type of potential sabotage to a vehicle, I mean, before what were they putting on those, like those Apple, like,
the tags.
Air tags.
Tags, and that's how they were tracking cars they wanted to steal. I mean, there's any of those types of things. I think that's where this really sort of comes from. You guys kind of hit the nail on the head here as far as being more of a security focused dynamic as far as preventing specifically against drug muling. I mean, added benefit.
Yeah.
Not a bad thing to have in your back pocket, I guess. But
that is value add.
Yeah.
Just when you're on the car lot and they're just like, oh, I didn't tell you about the blind mule prevention feature. Just like, What now?
That's happened to me 3 times.
Yeah.
Thank goodness somebody has a solution for
Gotta
that.
check your wheel well. Every day I check my wheel well.
I tell my aunt to stop going across the border.
Yes. But if when you look at other things that this could be used for, obviously security, even, I mean, simple stuff. I mean, I don't know, when you go through a construction site, if it can say something's in your stuck in your tire in the wheel well, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's lots of things this could lead to, I guess, is where I'm going. The more cameras, the more sensors you have telling you something is manipulating a function of your vehicle, I think it's not a bad thing. I mean, and there would not be, Ford would not be the first one to develop a technology and then figure out what it could be used for later on too.
True. Yeah.
Were you guys aware of blind mule drug trafficking? Is that something you guys knew about? Have you heard about it before?
I've driven into Mexico approximately 0 times.
Yeah, same.
Okay. Well, I was just curious because, so according to multiple reports, this has been happening and been a strategy from Mexican drug cartels for decades.
So then why did you laugh at me when I said this does happen to people?
Oh, because of I just thought it was funny how you said it. I was like, yes, it does happen to people.
I mean,
and I look like if this is a feature, I mean, it's kind of like the sad state of where we are in society, where you need a feature like the blind mule drug trafficking prevention tool.
But you don't.
But no, I
Some
just
people do, Anna.
Jeff,
I
you're
feel like-
going over the Illinois border.
I
You
feel
don't
like-
need it.
I feel like
I
this
get
is the-
nervous every time.
This is not. Maybe this isn't specifically for the Midwest market.
It might not be
What if
standard.
what if I'm in a parking lot of a dispensary?
Yeah,
Then I'm stuffing a bunch of stuff in your wheel well.
yeah, they're gonna mule like
Bunch of
way
gummies?
way
Yeah.
more expensive gummies into Wisconsin. I mean, I guess you never know. Who knows what's being hidden in our cars? This is, you know,
I
if
have to go look right now.
yeah, could we any way work this so that way I know when my kids have put stickers on our brand new car's interior, like where I can get an alert, like you have exactly 30 seconds to get this thing off before it's there forever.
You think it could tell you exactly how many Cheerios and goldfish are wedged within
Ugh,
the
I don't
crevices
wanna
of your
know.
seats?
Too many
Don't
I do
tell,
not miss
don't
those
ever
days.
share that information with me.
raisins. The worst one,
Raisins.
raisins, because I can look
That's
at a
on you.
I can look at a stale Cheerio and just be like, okay. I look at a raisin and I'm just like, gross.
That's on you. Why would you give him fruit back there, man?
Because it's healthy. It's not like it started as a grape.
What was that? That wasn't your normal high-pitched, like,
No, it was just, I mean, because I feel like a more responsible father when I give them raisins even instead of Cheerios or Goldfish. And then they just happen to drop half the box. Always.
wouldn't
got
die on
there.
that hill.
Always. No, I didn't go.
Yeah,
I'll try to keep it low.
you're yelling.
Why do we have to?
David, why are you so mad?
Because I keep falling victim to blind muling. All right. Before we jump into, in case you missed it, the story is maybe not as popular on our websites, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. We have another word from our new sponsor, Sickich. This week's episode brought to you by Sickich. Supply chain challenges like inventory shortages and late deliveries from suppliers have exposed weaknesses, shrinking profits for 93% of companies in the past 5 years. We are at a turning point. Businesses can modernize their supply chain management or scramble to survive when something goes wrong. This new report, 7 Key Areas for Modernizing Distribution, will help you unlock 7 key areas of supply chain management that enterprises can leverage to retain their market share and stay ahead of disruptions. Download it now. There is a link in the live chat and underneath the video. All right, in case you missed it, the story is maybe not as popular on our websites like Industrial Equipment News or IEN.com or Manufacturing.net, but, still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. What do you have for us this week, Anna?
I chose a story titled "The World's First At-Scale Indoor Vertical Berry Farm."
Interesting.
A lot of words in there.
I love these berries.
I know, it's a vertical farm. So the Plenty Richmond Farm in Richmond, Virginia opened this week and is designed to produce more than 4 million pounds of strawberries annually in less than 40,000 square feet by growing vertically on 30-foot tall towers. The farm will exclusively grow Driscoll's strawberries, the first of which will be available in early 2025. So while most vertical farming to date has been limited to lettuce, Plenty, the company, has spent decades designing what is a patent-pending modular growing system that they say is flexible enough to support a wide variety of crops. Plenty also says that its farms are the most technologically advanced in the world. So they can grow produce with peak season flavor year round, almost anywhere. So they talk about the Plenty Richmond farm, and they say everything is precisely controlled. They have a proprietary software to create the perfect environment for strawberry plants to thrive. They can manage temperature, light, humidity. The farm uses AI to analyze more than 10 million data points each day across its 12 grow rooms.
Wow.
Which then they can adapt those grow rooms environments to the evolving needs of those plants depending on the season. And so it was an exciting story for me because I think, when you look at what vertical farming is, it's essentially a controlled environment. And with that, you basically eliminate the need for pesticides.
Mm-hmm.
They also save water. They vastly reduce land use. And because of their ability to avoid extreme weather conditions, you also reduce your risk of crop destruction. The trade-off is that they are very energy intensive. Though I still think it's compelling to expand this technology in an age where I think renewable energy is more mature. To me, this is like one of those trade-offs that I feel like is shifting a little bit to the point where there is more benefit to exploring this technology than not. And, because berries are very expensive already, and they tend to be big carriers of pesticides, unfortunately, the reality in our world is like, if you don't have the money to afford organic produce, then you eat chemicals. That's just the reality, right? If this can somehow shift that a little, if Driscoll's, which is, I don't know this, but I would assume probably the largest producer of berries in the country, potentially, they're everywhere. And if they can produce berries without putting tons of chemicals on it, I think that's good for everybody. So there's a lot here that I think is positive. I'll be interested to see as these they start to roll out in other applications if this becomes more popular with farming. And again, like the difference in land use that you need here for this, obviously you're going up. It's just much more concentrated. So
I think this is wild. Looking at some of these vertical farms and checking out these berry columns, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, cool, right?
Very cool, very impressive. Also, just my youngest just housed 2 pounds of Driscoll strawberries the last couple of days. So I guess I went from feeling super good about it to when you're like, you just blasted your kid with chemicals. I mean, it's all right. It's a little give and take.
I think they're like, because fruit is like appealing to many pests.
Yeah.
And then also it's like difficult to wash it fully,
because it's in
there. Yeah. So it's like, that's the challenge. And then, right, is trying to like grow it without it getting destroyed by pests, but also not dousing it with chemicals.
And Driscoll's is the world's largest berry company.
There we go. Yeah.
There you go. Jeff, your thoughts are on indoor berry production.
First of all, I love these stories about agriculture and technology. And first thing this brought to me was like urban agriculture, which is something I'm also a big fan of, mainly because not only is it making really good use of space that a lot of times is not being used for anything else, but also because when you talk about, yes, it is more energy intensive to do these indoor growing, but then we also have to factor in things like logistics and distribution and bringing all these products to different places from the farm to the city or whatever the case may be. And if we can have more of these local growing centers and we can learn to do it more efficiently, to feed a geography without putting it on a semi, without putting it on a plane, whatever the case may be, to get it from point A to point B, that's also a big win. Because when you look at, we've talked about this a ton of times, if you're a food manufacturer, your margins are tight. Another thing that's also very difficult is finding drivers. It doesn't matter what you're hauling, but especially when it comes to produce, because you have a limited time frame in terms of when you can get that product from where it was produced to where it's going to be consumed. Those drivers are very expensive and also very difficult to find. So this could solve a ton of different problems if we can get this scaled up and do some more cost analysis in terms of, we're spending a lot more energy at the grow period, but what does that save us over time in terms of getting it to the consumer?
Well, it also, I don't know if you mentioned this, but it has to protect it a little bit better from extreme environment events, this indoor farming.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the thing is like, you think about how much waste is in agriculture especially when you look at all the extreme weather events that have been taking place now, droughts, rain events, tornadoes, hurricane stuff that just decimates a farm field. That stuff, it's very, crops are very sensitive to that stuff. And if you can get them out of that environment and protect them in this controlled environment, that's amazing. Yeah.
Well, and I can't remember the stat, but we just ran something in Food Manufacturing Magazine where it's something like 6 to 10% of all emissions go into the production of food that'll never make it to the table, just because of any number of factors that destroy it before it can make it to the table. And actually, kind of fun fact, I recently caught up with an old grade school friend, and this is what he does. He is a indoor farmer but he does leafy greens.
Yeah.
And just it is wild. Super happy, content.
Awesome.
Seems like a good gig. Jeff, what's your in case you missed it this week?
So I picked a story. Andruril and Microsoft are partnering to help soldiers see real-time threats. So Andruril, am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
Andruril Industries announced a new collaboration with Microsoft to advance the U.S. Army's Integrated Visual Augmentation, or IVAS program. This includes the initial integration with their Lattice Pro platform into the IVAS ecosystem. Basically what this is, it's smart glasses on steroids, which I think was pretty amazing. Basically, when they see how this fixes to the helmet, the headgear, allowing soldiers to see any and all sources of data that they can and have at their disposal. So it's going to help them understand everything from the climate that they're operating in to potential threats, whether it be drones overhead, unmanned aerial aircraft, different data points that they would have to either be looking at a map, be talking to somebody, having it all right in front of them. Basically, not only is going to be able to save them time, it's also going to help them to operate more effectively. Also just enhances the communication process. When you're dealing with troops, when you're dealing with equipment, when you're dealing with intelligence and all these things converging, to basically have a laptop right in front of you that helps sort all of this information, it's also going to help them to disseminate this stuff more quickly, respond to threats, share information on the battlefield. I think it's incredible in terms of the impact it could have, not only in social and soldier welfare, but just in communicating all the different things back to base. This is what I'm seeing out here. This is what's happening. This intel was off. This is good. I can use this. We're going to adjust fire and move over here. Whatever the case is, to be able to shoot, move, and communicate that much more quickly because you have so much more data at your disposal it's an incredible resource. I know I just remember, and granted, it was a million years ago when I was out in the field doing this stuff, and I still had, a paper map and, trying to communicate on a 30-pound radio that somebody's lugging on their back and everything else. To get to something like this is just, it's incredible for me to see. So it was really interesting to see these guys working with Microsoft to deliver this onto the battlefield. We'll see when it finally gets there, but just to have that collaboration already in place can only lead to better things.
Well, and I thought it was really cool that in this story, founder Palmer Luckey said this was his top priority.
Yeah.
And you're right. When it comes to autonomously detecting airborne threats, enhancing the survivability of soldiers in complex contested environments, those are critical issues. Yeah. And I mean, you see the form factor of this thing, and it looks a little heavy. It looks like
night vision goggles. Yeah, if that's kind of what it would be comparable to. They've always done so much. I mean, that Kevlar is nowhere near as heavy as it used to be.
Yeah.
So that's lighter. This is made with different materials that are also taking weight into consideration. So you're right. It does look clunky, but
it's
so
the first generation. Yeah. So much function. And I was going to piggyback that out with Meta released a couple of new VR headsets. And Anna, did you see how Meta also showed the potential? We're going to get Google Glass again. The smart augmented reality glasses. I thought, okay, this is just not first generation, but this is where we are. We've seen where we could be going. So this could be maybe not as cumbersome in the future.
Yeah. This is great. Anything, they say enhancing survivability in complex contested environments. That's really all you need to say, right?
Yeah.
Of the value of this. As we incorporate more and more emerging tech into full scope type applications like this one, it'll be interesting too to see what AI can bring to the table when applied to the warning system type functions that these have to detect what's happening airborne and the threats above. Like, from a predictive standpoint, is that going to be something that they can leverage AI for? I'll be interested to see how that stuff gets incorporated here too.
It makes every part of this makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
The right data to the right people at the right time. Just like, yeah, do that.
One thing about where this could go, getting back to the thing that leads to the thing.
You come around to it. You got to come around.
Put this also in use in like first responders, medical applications, when people are arriving on the scene to be able to have as much data fed to them as possible.
Oh, yeah.
The other places it could go, pretty amazing.
Well, and we've seen potential applications all the way down to the plant floor,
Sure.
where essentially you could have these IVAS headsets on plant managers and they could get real-time diagnostics on anything in the factory. Yeah. All right. For my, in case you missed it this week, I was up in the air. I had a bunch of stories, which is why we're late, so I apologize. But what I landed on was Flexiv's robot fish fillet shaping solution, automating cod production. And I was struck by this story because at first it kind of made me laugh, like just robots filleting fish. But then I got, really strong thing leading to thing vibes, Jeff. And I thought this was just an incredible example of what automation could look like or does look like in a huge seafood producer. So Flexiv this week announced a fully automated line that deploys the company's Risen 4 adaptive robot and a combination of computer vision and force control to identify and shape breaded fish fillets. They're made for a large but unnamed seafood producer in Asia, and the system makes uniform portions, work that used to be performed by manual labor. This manual shaping was actually really exhausting work for workers, and it led to high turnover and other operational challenges. Now, as I said, I picked this story because sometimes when you think of a process like filleting fish, to me, that's not necessarily something that you think could be automated. To me anyways, I understand that once you're in a food manufacturing facility, it can all be automated. But I thought this was really cool because it was also an example of, finding an automated solution for work that really nobody wants to do.
Yeah.
Jeff, I don't know if you had a chance to check this out. What did you think of Flex's new system?
No, I think you kind of nailed the nail on the head again there. As far as eliminating some of this manual work, that it's hard. It is hard work when you're doing that kind of stuff. Any type of trimming type of work in a food processing facility, not exactly the ideal job.
It sounds terrible. I want to fillet my own fish, but it stops there.
Yeah, hard work. But also that you're reducing risk for injuries. I mean, it's not like they're using paper plastic silverware or something to cut up these fish. That's some pretty serious hardware that they're working with there. When you look at that, you look at quality controls, all of those types of things. It checks all those boxes. What'll be interesting is if they can somehow form fit this to even get on some of those processing like boats and ships that you see where a lot of that takes place as well. Mm-hmm. You'd think this type of application could also help reduce waste, which we were just talking about in food is such a big deal.
Flexiv's cutting-edge solution combines a custom end-of-arm tooling and a computer vision that enables precision and efficiency that goes far beyond what any human worker is capable of. And Anna, we're going to keep talking about AI, whether or not it's, some company slapping AI on already existent solution or a really true groundbreaking technology. But this is an AI-powered computer vision system that helps accurately detect the location of each fillet because, these are flying off the production line in different spots. Then, operating in sync with the speed of the conveyor line, these robots shape the portions without lifting them, using force control to apply the precise amount of pressure needed to form the fillets without causing damage. I mean, to operate with this consistency and speed would be impossible for human workers, and it's also self-cleaning. So obviously these things get covered in food debris, but anything that attaches to it is automatically removed. I thought every part of the story just sounded smart to me.
Yeah, the self-cleaning part is very cool. And then secondly, to your point about, the type of efficiency and speed that's not possible for human workers. I mean, that's so true. There was, some legislation that was passed and then unpassed a couple of years back about speeding up conveyor lines and food plants. And the consensus, I think, from the workforce and the unions in those plants was, this is scary. We don't want to do this. And I don't think that's I don't think that's the kind of work that the average skilled worker in a food plant is wanting to do. It's dangerous. It's like tedious. So perfect application for this type of automation for sure.
I mean, to Jeff's point, that's just a lot of really sharp knives moving really fast in real close proximity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I understand that this is a very carefully curated photo that it was provided with the release, but it's just looks a little safer. Well, before we get out of here this week, let's jump into our final thoughts. Anna, what do you have for us for a final thought this week?
Just quickly, I wanted to mention this week we unveiled our Big 50 list. Industrial Distribution is one of the brands within our group. It reaches industrial suppliers, your Grangers and Fastenals and everybody from, those big companies all the way down to like a small mom and pop type distributor. Each year we create a ranking of the 50 biggest industrial supplies distributors based on their revenue for the previous fiscal year. So that unveiled this week. We have a 3-part series video countdown that takes you from 50 to 1. Mm-hmm. If you have like an hour at least, or you could split it up. There's 3 videos. But anyway, it's a fun project to work on. We get to talk to those distributors and kind of see where they're at and take the temperature of the market. And they tell us, this is the context behind our number. This is why we're doing well or not. This is what we have planned. So you get a lot of data just in that report. So if anyone is interested, it's a good way to kind of find out the health of your suppliers, and if you're in manufacturing, or at least maybe get a feel for some of the big leaders in the industry and what they're doing. That's on our website, inddist.com, inddist.com, if you'd like to take a look.
I strongly encourage everybody to take a look, because if you know nothing or everything about that industry, this gives you just a perfect glimpse into it. And I find myself learning something new every year, every time I watch it, and you guys just knock it out of the park with that. It's an incredible product.
Thanks, man.
My final thought this week has just changed because producer Eric found a 1976 by 6 Amphicat on Marketplace, and it's even close. So we got to get out of here because I'm going to go buy this thing.
Holy cow.
They recently reduced the price. It's not the one I want, but this will work. We got to start somewhere, right? There's another one a little bit further away. We'll get both, so that way, we can go out together. Yeah. We got to make sure we're not bidding against each other. Yes, still available. And then
I can't wait. Can I listen when you call your wife and ask her, hey, I was just, kind of thinking about.
It's going to be great. He's going to buy this for the full price, and then I'll buy it from him for less.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Anna, you know what?
Like a week or two. I got to unload this thing.
Anna, this looks like a 2-seater. So, you can just sit right next to me when we roll right up the driveway, and you can see my wife's expression just like, look what he did.
He owns it.
Yeah.
This guy.
See this? It says
that you're married
to. Yeah. You're married to this Amphicat now. Sorry. And just like, hey, honey, this is half yours.
She's going to be so excited.
She will be pumped. You know what? Yes, as producer Eric said, there is room for suitcases in the back. And unfortunately, I think, at this point, she would just see that and she'd be like, makes sense. That makes sense. Also, depending on when you are listening to the podcast, this Saturday, the 41st annual Chili Cook-Off, Old Grease coming to represent, take home an award for the 4th or 5th year in a row now. So, we've got a great recipe this year. We've got a great theme for the 10th this year. Really excited about it. And, going to pace myself just because this winds up being a long day of cooking.
Eating too much chili.
Yeah.
You're going to pace yourself on that?
Yeah. You got to pace yourself in all things. And it was, they sent out an email saying it's going to be the biggest one ever. And there was like a little bit of fear. We're just like, I liked it when it was smaller. But so super excited for the Chili Cook-Off. If you find yourself in the Madison area, please join us. Or, you know what? If you find one in your area, go. A Chili Cook-Off is fantastic. Participate, even if you have bad chili, that actually makes the Chili Cook-Off way better because word starts to spread of the good chilies around there. And then word starts to spread like you need to go to 5 because 5's chili is borderline toxic. Yeah, it's real smoky. You burned it. So have a good weekend either way. And if you would like a ride in this Amphicat,
David will have it by the weekend.
I will. Jeff, what's your final thought this week?
2 things. First of all, Anna and I got an email from, I want to make sure I get her name right. Where is it here now? From Angie. Did you get that email too? Did you see that? And I just wanted to let Angie know that we are working on it. Okay. She emailed asking for some information. We're going after it. We will try to figure that out for her.
What is
She wanted some information about a company.
Oh, okay.
Certain company. I didn't have time this week, but we will definitely get to this, and we will get back to you on what you're looking for. So
that's your final.
It's nothing. No, relax.
Oh, okay.
Man,
okay.
Your voice was this close to cracking that time.
Mm-hmm.
You okay?
You're getting me.
You all right?
Yep.
See, this is great because I did this on purpose because David doesn't know every detail about
you
this.
did it on purpose.
Yeah,
and I'm trying.
So Angie,
My best.
it's cool. We'll get back to you. Don't worry about it. The other thing is, I came to a realization actually last night. I was reading before I went to bed. I have never been happier to live in the time period in which I now live. I'm reading this book about a shipwreck, and basically it's describing life on this boat. This is like the 1740s, okay, to your perspective, but just the day-to-day. And it ends up on this particular voyage, like half of the crew dies from scurvy.
Oh.
They're talking about the rat infestation and what they're eating on this boat. And this comes right after another book that I read about another exploration into the Arctic Circle that did not go great.
Yeah.
And it just made me feel like, it's so good to know everything that's out there, to understand all about the environment that I could venture into at any given time. There's definitely a sense of reassurance there. Maybe I don't have that pioneering spirit of my forefathers, but I also know that if I go on a cruise, which probably is never going to happen, have some citrus and it'll be good.
Yeah.
And, you'll always have readily available indoor farm grown strawberries.
Yeah, there's not going to be any type of, plumbing issues that I need to worry about. There's always going to be a clean place for me to take care of business.
God, I don't want to read
all
this
this
book.
type of stuff.
No, I just watched, what is it, In the Heart of the Sea, about the lead up to writing Moby Dick. And same thing, I was like, this is a great movie, or I enjoyed the movie. I want no part of this life.
Yeah.
Just
that is a hard way to live.
Yeah. Hey, I'm I'm gonna leave for maybe 3 years and maybe come back and hopefully have some whale oil.
Right.
And Joe actually returned from his cruise and he sent us a little bit about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I wanted to share if you guys got a minute. So Joe says, finally had our cruise. During the podcast, we weren't all sure that we would do a cruise, and he says that he was nervous himself, but it turned out fantastic.
Oh, good.
Very fun and entertaining. So I was just, you made me think of it. I'm like, well, here you go. Here's the pitch, Jeff.
Hey, a lot of people, it's worked for them. I'm sure it's great.
Yep. Many things to do, drink and eat. He'll be doing another one at some point. And it has changed a lot since he and his wife took a cruise, or since his wife took a cruise when she was young, about 25 years ago. They had a great time.
Awesome.
He's only done this one cruise so he can speak to it, but it was great.
Good to hear.
Amazing food, and the staff was good too. That was one thing I was always curious about. It's like, they know they got you there. Do they really need to be that nice? But high marks from Joe.
I think they expect tips at the end.
Yeah?
So
Okay.
You think once they get you on the boat, they're just like, sit down.
Yeah. Take a seat.
So mean.
Right? They throw
Get
the
your
food
own
at you.
food.
Yeah, it's like, what was that restaurant that had a hot minute in the sun where they were rude to you and then everyone wanted to go to that? Ed DeBevick's, yeah. It's just like, wait a second, I'm paying a premium for laughably bad service.
Yep.
But occasionally they sing and dance, so that makes up for it.
Okay.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You could also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first, and subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us every Thursday when we go live. All right, for Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manty. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.